Mom called me selfish and useless. So, I built the life without her support. The first time my mother called me useless, I was 7 years old. I had spent hours creating a birthday card for her, a watercolor painting of our family standing in front of our small suburban home. The colors bled together at the edges, my childish hands still learning control, but I was proud of the way I'd capture her smile. "What's this mess?" She barely glanced at it, her attention fixed on the television where my brother's science competition was being featured on local news. He'd won first place again. "It's your birthday card, Mom." I pointed to the painting.
"See?
"That's you with the sparkly hair."
She sighed.
"Elena, you've wasted all that paper for this? Go wash up and set the table. Your brother's celebration dinner is in 30 minutes. That night, my mother's birthday turned into another celebration of my brother's genius. My card ended up in the recycling bin the next morning. That was my first lesson. Art wasn't valuable. Art was a mess to be cleaned up. But I couldn't stop. Something inside me needed to create, to express, to translate what I saw in my mind onto paper. While my brother Michael collected trophies, I collected moments, sketching sunlight through leaves, capturing the wrinkles around our elderly neighbor's eyes when she laughed, painting the stray cat that visited our backyard. By 12, I had filled dozens of sketchbooks, all hidden under my bed. My mother thought I was studying when I locked myself in my room for hours. In reality, I was teaching myself how to blend colors, create shadows, make eyes look alive on paper. "Why can't you be more like your brother?" became the soundtrack of my adolescence. Michael was focused, practical, ambitious. He knew what he wanted, medical school, and every action was a step toward that goal. My mother worked 2 jobs to support his dream, her pride evident in every sacrifice. I, on the other hand, was the disappointment. "Drawing won't pay bills, Elena," she'd say, finding me sketching instead of working on algebra. "You think artists make a living? They starve. Is that what you want? To be a burden?" When I turned 14, I got my first job washing dishes at a local diner. Not because we needed the money, but because I needed art supplies. Quality paints and brushes were expensive, and I refused to ask my mother for a single cent toward what she called my childish hobby. "At least you're learning responsibility," she said, assuming I was saving for college. I nodded, letting her believe what she wanted. The truth emerged 6 months later when she cleaned my room and found my collection: sketchbooks, small canvases, tubes of paint, professional drawing pencils. "This is what you've been wasting money on?" She held up a half-finished painting of the abandoned train station. "Do you know what Michael could do with this money? AP exam fees, college applications." "It's my money," I said quietly. "I earned it. And this is how you spend it? On nonsense." She shook the painting, smearing the wet oil. "This is why I call you selfish, Elena. Everything is about what makes you happy. Never thinking about the family, about the future." That night, I came home to find my art supplies dumped in the center of my bedroom. 3 canvases torn, paint tubes squeezed empty onto my bedspread. I didn't cry. Something inside me had hardened over years of dismissal. Instead, I quietly cleaned up, salvaged what I could, and made a decision. The next day, I approached Mr. Garza, the owner of a small bakery 6 blocks from our house. "I need a space," I told him. "Somewhere I can work on projects. I can pay rent. Not much, but something." Mr. Garza studied me. "What kind of projects?" I hesitated, then showed him photos of my paintings on my phone. "You did these? How old are you now?" 15 next month. He nodded slowly. "There's a storage room behind the bakery. It's not much, no windows, just an overhead light." He named a price that was half what I expected. "No funny business back there, understand? Just your art." That dusty, dimly lit storage unit became my salvation. I snuck in almost every day after school, telling my mother I was working extra shifts or studying at the library. The space smelled of flour from the bakery, mixed with a sharp scent of turpentine and acrylic. I strung up fairy lights, cleared the shelves of old bakery equipment, and created my studio. There, in that hidden space, I finally felt like I could breathe. My canvases grew larger, my techniques bolder. I experimented with mixed media, abstract forms, self-portraits that revealed parts of myself I never showed at home. In that room, I wasn't useless Elena who couldn't compete with her genius brother. I wasn't selfish Elena who wasted time on frivolous pursuits. I was just an artist, creating because I had to, because not creating felt like drowning. I would lose track of time there, emerging only when Mr. Garza knocked to let me know he was closing. Sometimes he'd leave day-old pastries hanging on the doorknob. Artists need to eat, he'd call, never intruding. For almost 2 years, I lived a double life, dutiful daughter at home, passionate artist in secret. I sold small paintings to bakery customers, using the money for supplies and rent for my sanctuary. I thought I was safe. I thought I had found a way to survive until I could leave home. I thought my mother would never find my sacred space. I was wrong. It happened on a Thursday in April, 2 months before my high school graduation. That afternoon had been magical. Mr. Garza had brought me a small vase of fresh wildflowers to use as a subject, and the sunlight coming through the bakery's back door had illuminated my studio with unusual brightness. I had been working on what I considered my masterpiece, a large canvas depicting a figure emerging from darkness, wrapped in swirls of color that represented all the emotions I kept bottled inside. The painting was deeply personal, almost painfully so. It showed the duality of my life, the shadow self I presented at home, and the vibrant artist I became in secret. I poured everything into it. Every tear swallowed, every cruel word endured, every moment of beauty I'd found despite it all. I lost track of time. Mr. Garza had left early for his grandson's baseball game, trusting me to lock up. "Just pull the door closed when you leave," he'd said. "It locks automatically." By the time I checked my phone, there were 6 missed calls from my mother. My blood ran cold. I was supposed to be home 2 hours ago for a dinner with Michael's pre-med advisor, who was visiting from Harvard. I'd completely forgotten. I scrambled to clean my brushes, texting a feeble excuse about staying late at school for a project. My hands trembled so badly I knocked over a jar of turpentine, spilling it across the floor. As I mopped it up, my phone buzzed again. "Where are you?" The all-caps message from my mother made my stomach twist. I grabbed my backpack, took one last look at my unfinished masterpiece, and rushed out, pulling the door firmly behind me. In my haste, I didn't notice it had bounced back slightly, failing to latch completely. I also didn't notice the car parked across the street, my mother's faded blue Honda. The dinner was excruciating. Michael and the advisor discussed cellular biology, while my mother beamed with pride. I sat quietly, picking at my food, until my mother sharply asked me to share my college plans with our guest. "Elena hasn't quite found her direction yet," she said before I could answer. "But she's practical. She'll figure it out." The underlying message was clear. Unlike her brother, Elena was directionless, unremarkable. After dinner, I slipped away to my room, claiming homework. I lay on my bed, sketching mindlessly, when my door flew open. My mother stood there, her face contorted with a rage I'd never seen before. "Get up," she commanded.
Now.
Something in her voice made me obey instantly. She grabbed my arm, marching me to the car where Michael sat in the back seat, looking confused and uncomfortable. "Mom, what's going on?" I asked as she drove recklessly through town. "I followed you today," she said, her voice frighteningly calm. "I wanted to see what was so important that you'd miss Michael's dinner. I watched you enter that building behind the bakery. I waited and waited." My heart stopped. "Mom, I can explain. 2 years," she continued as if I hadn't spoken. 2 years of lies. "I'm at the library. I'm working late. All this time, you've been wasting your life in that filthy closet." We screeched to a halt behind the bakery. The door to my studio stood partially open, light spilling out.
"Go on," she said.
"Show your brother what you've been doing instead of preparing for your future." Michael followed hesitantly as she pushed me toward the door. When we entered, he gasped softly. My paintings lined the walls, landscapes, portraits, abstracts. 2 years of secret work on display. "Elena,"
he whispered.
"these are amazing." My mother snorted. Amazing? This is why her grades are mediocre. This is why she has no direction. She stalked around the small space, examining my supplies, my sketches, my unfinished masterpiece on the easel. Do you know what this cost? She waved at the room. Money that could have gone to family expenses, to your brother's education? I paid for it myself, I said, finding my voice. Every penny. With time stolen from your studies. She approached my canvas, eyeing it with disgust. This is what matters to you? This self-indulgent nonsense. Before I could move, she reached into her purse and pulled out something that caught the light, a fruit knife from our kitchen. Without hesitation, she plunged it into my canvas, dragging it downward with a violent jerk. The sound it made was like a body being torn open. No, I screamed, lunging forward, but Michael caught me, holding me back. You're a selfish brat, she spat, turning her fury on my other works. Wasting time instead of contributing to the family. Your brother is applying to medical school while you play with paints. She knocked over jars of brushes, swept palette knives to the floor, tore smaller canvases from the walls. Michael finally released me, moving toward her. Mom, stop. This is crazy. She froze, knife in hand, breathing heavily. Take your things, she said to me, suddenly calm. All of them. This ends today. Michael helped me gather what remained of my supplies in silence. My mother watched from the doorway, arms crossed. When we finished, she locked the studio and handed the key to Mr. Garza's night baker, who had come to investigate the commotion. Tell your boss we won't be renting this space anymore, she said. That night, I didn't go home. I texted Michael that I was safe, then slept on a bench in the park, surrounded by garbage bags containing the remnants of my passion. As dawn broke, I made a decision. In 2 months, I would turn 18, and then I would disappear. I didn't leave dramatically on graduation day like I'd fantasized. Instead, I slipped away on a random Tuesday in June, 1 week after my 18th birthday and 2 days after receiving my diploma. My mother hadn't attended the ceremony. Michael had a research fellowship interview the same day. More important, as always, I'd spent those 2 months playing the part of the repentant daughter. I studied visibly at the kitchen table. I applied to community colleges with practical programs, nursing, accounting. I let her believe she'd won. Meanwhile, I worked double shifts at the diner, saving every penny. I secretly contacted Mr. Garza, who still felt terrible about what had happened. I should have warned you when I saw her car, he said. I never thought she'd do something like that. I didn't blame him. He helped me store the few undamaged paintings in his garage until I could retrieve them. He also connected me with his daughter in Philadelphia, 3 hours away and far enough that my mother wouldn't accidentally spot me on the street. On that Tuesday morning, I left while my mother was at work and Michael was volunteering at the hospital. I took only what fit in my backpack and duffel bag, clothes, my salvaged art supplies, the $1,742 I'd saved. I left no note. What was there to say? Lucia, Mr. Garza's daughter, met me at the bus station in Philadelphia. She was 30, a nurse with a small apartment and a spare futon. 3 months, she offered. Until you get on your feet, Dad made me promise. Those 3 months stretched into 6 as I struggled to find steady work. The recession had hit Philly hard, and no one wanted to hire an 18-year-old with just a high school diploma. I bounced between waitressing gigs, each lasting a few weeks before the restaurant would cut staff. The one constant was my art. I painted at night on Lucia's tiny balcony, using cheap supplies from the dollar store when my professional ones ran out. I couldn't afford canvases, so I painted on cardboard, on thrift store picture frames with the glass removed, on wooden panels rescued from construction dumpsters. You should try selling these, Lucia suggested one night, examining a cityscape I'd painted on the back of a cabinet door. There's a flea market in Northern Liberties every weekend. I was hesitant. My art still felt private, vulnerable. But rent was due, and Lucia had already extended my stay twice. That Saturday, I rented a small table at the flea market for $25, nearly a day's wages. I displayed 12 pieces, pricing them between $15 and $40. By mid-afternoon, I'd sold nothing. People admired my work, but walked away shaking their heads at the price. As I packed up, defeated, an elderly man in a tweed jacket approached. "You're closing up shop?" he asked, examining a small painting of a woman looking out a window. "No point staying," I said. "No one's buying." He picked up the painting. "How much?" $15. He frowned. "That's all." I shrugged. "No one thinks they're worth more." He studied me over wire-rimmed glasses. "Young lady, the problem isn't your art. It's your presentation." He gestured around the flea market. "Context matters. People buy perception as much as product." He handed me a business card. "Walter Reynolds, art consultant. I have a friend who runs a cafe in University City. They display local artists' work. I'll put in a word if you're interested." I was suspicious but desperate. The next week, I met Walter at The Grind, a coffee shop frequented by Penn students. The owner, Diane, examined my portfolio, photos of my work on my cracked phone screen. "These have potential," she said. "But you need a brand, a story. No one cares about Elena Martinez, teenager with a paintbrush." I thought of my mother's voice, useless, selfish, wasting time. Of the knife slashing through my canvas. Of the darkness I'd emerged from. "What about a lumen?" I suggested. The Latin word for light had been one of the few things I'd retained from Michael's incessant studying aloud. Walter smiled. "Mysterious. Androgynous. I like it." 2 weeks later, 5 of my paintings hung on the Grind's exposed brick wall, each with a small placard, "A Lumen, Emergence Series, $175. I nearly choked when Diane suggested the price, but Walter insisted. "Value yourself or no one else will," he said. The first painting sold in 3 days to a literature professor. The second a week later to a medical student who reminded me painfully of Michael. By month's end, all 5 had sold, and Diane wanted more. For the first time, I could afford real supplies, a security deposit on a tiny studio apartment in a questionable neighborhood. I still waitressed 4 nights a week, but my days belonged to art. I created faster, bolder. Paintings flowed from me like water breaking through a dam. Walter placed them in 3 more cafes, then a small gallery in Old City. A local arts blog mentioned a lumen as an emerging voice with raw, emotional precision. No one knew a lumen was me. I never attended openings or met buyers. Walter handled everything, taking a modest 15% commission. I wanted to remain anonymous, to let the work speak for itself. But truthfully, I was afraid my mother would somehow find me, afraid she would destroy what I was building, just as she destroyed my studio.
A year passed.
Then, too, my work commanded higher prices, appeared in better galleries. I moved to a safer apartment, then a small house with a sunroom I converted into a studio. I stopped waitressing. I enrolled in night classes at the Art Institute. Michael texted occasionally, but I rarely responded. He was in medical school now, fulfilling the future my mother had chosen for him. I was creating my own. On the 3rd anniversary of my escape, I received a commission request, my first major one, from a Chicago-based corporate collection. They wanted 3 large pieces for their headquarters lobby. The email ended with a question that stopped my heart. Would a lumen consider a solo exhibition in our gallery space next fall? After years of hiding, they wanted me to step into the light. The Chicago exhibition changed everything. After 3 years of hiding behind my pseudonym, I finally agreed to appear as a lumen, though on my terms. I wouldn't give interviews or allow photographs. I would attend the opening reception but remain anonymous, just another guest admiring the art. Walter thought I was being ridiculous. "You've built this mystique around a lumen and that's fine," he said over coffee the week before the show. "But at some point, you need to own your success." I traced the rim of my mug, avoiding his eyes. "I'm not ready." The truth was more complicated. A lumen had become more than a pseudonym. She was my protection, my shield against the vulnerability that came with creating such personal work. If people knew Elena Martinez was a lumen, they'd see the broken girl behind the paintings, the one who wasn't good enough for her own mother. The Chicago show exceeded everyone's expectations. All 14 pieces sold, including a triptych purchased by a museum curator from Boston. Art blogs buzzed about the elusive A. Lumen, speculating about the artist's identity. Some thought I was a middle-aged professor. Others guessed I was a collective of women artists. No one suspected a 21-year-old college dropout with a chip on her shoulder and nightmares about slashed canvases. 6 months later, Walter called with news that made my hands shake. "The Gilbert Modern wants to host your first major solo exhibition," he said, naming a prestigious gallery in my hometown. "No," I said immediately. "Anywhere but there." "Elena, this is huge. They're offering a 3-month run, a catalog, press coverage." "I don't care. Pick another city." Walter sighed. "The Gilbert has connections to major museums. This could put you in permanent collections. Besides, don't you want to show everyone back home what you've accomplished?" That question lingered for days. Did I want my mother to know? To see my success, my useless hobby, hanging on prestigious walls? The petty part of me, the wounded child still nursing old hurts, whispered yes. But the artist in me, the one who had found freedom in anonymity, whispered no. In the end, ambition won. I agreed to the exhibition on one condition: I would attend the opening as Elena Martinez, ordinary guest, while Walter played the role of Lumen's representative. What I didn't know, couldn't have known, was that my mother had taken a part-time job at the Gilbert Modern 6 months earlier. After my father's death from a sudden heart attack the previous year, she had struggled financially. The Cultural Affairs Department of the city hired her as part of their maintenance staff. 3 evenings a week, she vacuumed the same galleries where my art would hang. I learned this from Michael, who had finally finished medical school and sporadically updated me about our mother. I'd maintained minimal contact with him over the years. Birthday texts, occasional calls. He respected my boundaries but never stopped trying to bridge the gap. "Mom's working at some art gallery now," he mentioned during a rare phone call. "Cleaning job evenings. She hates it, says the artists are pretentious." My blood ran cold. Which gallery? The Gilbert something? Downtown. I nearly canceled the exhibition. Walter talked me down. "What are the chances she'll connect A. Lumen to you? She's never seen your recent work. And you'll be just another guest at the opening." The risk seemed manageable. Besides, a perverse curiosity had taken hold. What would she think of A. Lumen's work? Would she dismiss it as she had dismissed mine? The night of the opening arrived. The Gilbert Modern had transformed into a glittering showcase for my art. 27 pieces, including a recreation of the self-portrait my mother had destroyed years ago. I'd painted it from memory, every brushstroke an act of reclamation. I wore a simple black dress and minimal makeup, nothing like the bohemian artist people might expect. My hair, now cut short, was different from the long waves I'd had as a teenager. No one would recognize me. I arrived 30 minutes after the official start, when the gallery was already crowded with collectors, critics, and local dignitaries. Walter texted that my mother was working, replacing empty glasses and straightening chairs in her gray maintenance uniform. My heart pounded as I entered, scanning the room for her familiar figure. There, by the bar. Older now, her hair streaked with gray, lines etched more deeply around her mouth. She moved efficiently, invisibly, through the crowd that had gathered to see my work. I accepted a glass of champagne from a passing waiter and drifted toward the centerpiece of the exhibition, the recreated self-portrait. A small crowd had gathered, murmuring appreciatively. Among them stood Michael. I froze. He wasn't supposed to be here. He lived in Boston now, completing his residency. We'd spoken just last week, and he hadn't mentioned visiting. Before I could retreat, he turned and our eyes met. For a moment, he didn't recognize me. It had been 4 years, after all. Then his eyes widened. "Elena," he whispered, moving toward me. I put a finger to my lips, glancing meaningfully at our mother, who was collecting empty glasses nearby. Understanding dawned on his face as he looked from me to the painting and back again. "You're..." I nodded slightly, heart hammering. "Holy shit," he breathed. "A. Lumen. It's you." As the reality of my deception settled over him, I saw emotions battle across his face: shock, confusion, hurt, and finally, a strange pride. "Mom has no idea, does she?" he asked. "No one does," I replied softly. "And I need to keep it that way. At least for tonight." Michael nodded slowly, a grin spreading across his face. "Your secret's safe with me." "But Elena," he gestured to the crowded gallery, to my paintings commanding the space, "this is incredible." As we spoke, my mother moved closer, dutifully collecting discarded napkins near us. She passed by without a glance, unseeing. The daughter she had called useless stood 3 feet away, surrounded by the very art she had tried to destroy. For an hour, I played this surreal game of cat and mouse throughout the gallery, me admiring my own artwork alongside strangers, my mother cleaning up after us, neither acknowledging the other. Michael stayed close, occasionally steering me away when she approached too near. "This is insane," he whispered as we examined a landscape near the back wall. "You need to tell her." "Why?" I kept my voice low. "So she can take credit? Pretend she always supported me." Michael sighed. "She's different now, Elena. Dad's death changed her. She's humbler." I snorted. "Is that why she's working here instead of coming to you for money?" His silence told me I'd hit a nerve. So she had asked him for help after all. As the night progressed, critics and collectors sought out Walter, peppering him with questions about A Lumen. I watched from a distance as he played his role perfectly, revealing nothing meaningful while seeming to say a great deal. The culmination of the evening arrived when the gallery director clinked a glass for attention. A hush fell over the crowd as she thanked everyone for coming to this landmark exhibition by one of contemporary art's most intriguing talents. While the artist prefers to remain anonymous, she continued, A Lumen's representative Walter Reynolds will say a few words about the collection. Walter stepped forward, smiling graciously. A Lumen asked me to share that this exhibition holds special significance. Many of you have noticed the centerpiece. He gestured to my recreated self-portrait, titled simply Rebirth. This painting represents the artist's journey from darkness into light, from silencing to expression. As he spoke, I noticed my mother pausing in her work, dustpan in hand, listening with unusual attention. The artist grew up in this very city, Walter continued, and faced significant opposition to their artistic path. In fact, the original version of Rebirth was destroyed by someone who claimed to love the artist but couldn't accept their passion. A murmur ran through the audience. My mother stood frozen, her face suddenly pale. A Lumen recreated it from memory, Walter said, as an act of reclamation and resilience. It stands as testament to the idea that we can rebuild what others destroy, often making it more powerful in the process. When the speech ended and applause filled the room, my mother remained motionless, staring at my painting with an intensity that made my skin prickle. Something in her posture, in the slight trembling of her hands, told me she recognized something in the work, perhaps not me specifically, but a shadow, an echo of the daughter whose art she had destroyed. Emboldened by Walter's speech and the warmth of the crowd's reception, I made a decision. I would approach her, not to reveal myself, but to observe her reaction more closely. I moved across the room, champagne glass in hand, and stopped beside her, pretending to admire my own painting. "It's powerful, isn't it?" I said casually. She startled slightly, then composed herself. "Yes," she replied, her voice rougher than I remembered. "It reminds me of something my daughter used to paint before she wasted her life." The words hit me like a physical blow. After all these years, her judgment hadn't softened. In her mind, I was still the selfish, useless daughter who had chosen the wrong path. Something inside me snapped. I turned to face her directly, calm and composed despite the rage coursing through me. "She didn't waste it," I said evenly. "She turned that pain into purpose." My mother's eyes met mine, and for a moment, nothing happened. I'd changed more than I realized. My voice was deeper, my posture straighter, my face thinner and more angular. But as she looked at me, recognition dawned slowly. Then all at once, the color drained from her face. Her lips parted, but no sound emerged. I didn't smile. I didn't explain. I didn't need to. Before she could speak, the gallery director appeared at my elbow. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but some collectors from New York are eager to discuss Rebirth. Would you mind, Elena?" My mother's eyes widened at my name. The director, oblivious to the tension between us, continued, "As a Lumen's special consultant on this exhibition, your insights would be valuable." I nodded, holding my mother's gaze for one more moment before turning away. Let her make of that what she would. The title special consultant was vague enough to maintain my anonymity while giving me a reason to be there. For the remainder of the evening, my mother watched me from across the room. She made no attempt to approach me again. When the crowd thinned and the event wound down, she disappeared into a service corridor. Michael found me by the coat check. "Mom left," he said. "She told her supervisor she wasn't feeling well." "Did she say anything to you?" I asked. "Just one thing." He hesitated. "She asked if I knew you were a Lumen." "What did you tell her?" I said I didn't know what she was talking about. He studied my face. Was that wrong? I squeezed his arm. "No. This isn't your secret to tell." As we stepped outside into the cool night air, reporters approached, asking if I was associated with a Lumen. I shook my head and kept walking, Michael beside me. "What now?" he asked when we were alone. I looked up at the stars, feeling strangely light. Now we see what she does with the truth. The ball was in her court. After years of hiding, of building a life and career she knew nothing about, I had revealed myself on my own terms. Not as the daughter seeking approval, but as the artist who had succeeded despite her. I was no longer waiting for an apology. I was waiting to see if she could face what she had tried to destroy. 3 days passed without a word from my mother. I stayed in town, using the exhibition as an excuse to extend my visit while secretly hoping for, what? Reconciliation? Vindication? I wasn't sure myself. The show was a triumph. Every major art publication covered it. Collectors circled like elegant sharks. Museum representatives inquired about acquiring pieces for permanent collections. Through it all, I maintained my cover as special consultant, attending events and discussions about a Lumen's work while Walter continued his role as my representative. My mother didn't return to the gallery. The director mentioned she had called in sick, then requested vacation time. "Strange timing," she said, oblivious to the real story. She's never missed work before. On the 4th morning, I sat with Michael at a cafe downtown, stirring my coffee absently. "I'm leaving tomorrow," I told him. "There's nothing for me here." He studied me over his mug. "What did you expect would happen, Elena? That she'd fall to her knees, begging forgiveness?" Of course not. But part of me had hoped for something, acknowledgement at least. "She's proud," Michael said. "Always has been. And she was wrong about you in a way that's almost impossible to admit." I glanced up. "You mean she'd have to face that she destroyed something precious? That she nearly destroyed me?" "Exactly." He reached for my hand. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry I didn't stand up for you back then. I was so focused on being perfect that I couldn't risk rocking the boat." His apology, unexpected and sincere, brought sudden tears to my eyes. "You were a kid too, Michael." Still, I knew what she was doing wasn't right. He squeezed my hand, then let go. "There's something else you should know. Mom lost her job at the cultural department last month. Budget cuts. The cleaning position at the gallery is all she is now." The information settled uncomfortably. I had imagined my mother as unchanged, the same domineering woman who had torn up my drawings and slashed my canvas. Learning about her financial struggles, seeing her cleaning up after art patrons, complicated the narrative I'd constructed. When I returned to my hotel room that afternoon, a package waited at the front desk. No return address, just my name in familiar handwriting. Inside was a small wooden box I recognized immediately, my father's old cigar box where he had kept ticket stubs and photographs. I had left it behind when I fled at 18. With trembling fingers, I opened it. Inside lay dozens of sketches, my earliest drawings, from when I was 7 or 8 years old. The birthday card I had made her. Pages torn from school notebooks with margin doodles, all crumpled, then carefully smoothed out and preserved. She had kept them. All this time, she had kept them. At the bottom of the box lay a single sheet of paper, not one of my drawings, but a letter written in my mother's cramped handwriting. Elena, I won't ask for forgiveness. What I did was unforgivable. I told myself I was protecting you from disappointment, from struggle. Your father's cousin was an artist, talented, brilliant. He died penniless, alone.
I was terrified the same would happen to you.
Fear is no excuse.
I see that now.
When your father died, I found this box hidden in his closet. He saved everything you created. He believed in you when I couldn't. Yesterday, I stood in that gallery and saw what you've become despite me, not because of me. I have no right to claim any part of your success. My apartment is being sold. The rent is increasing beyond what I can afford on my salary. I don't ask for your help. I only wanted you to have these drawings back. They were never mine to keep.
Mom.
No signature of affection. No plea for money or assistance. Just the plain truth, offered without expectation. I sat for a long time. The box open in my lap, childhood drawings scattered across the bed. Then I picked up my phone and called Walter. The piece titled Resilience. Has it sold yet?
No, he said.
There's interest, but... Take it off the market, I interrupted. I need it. The next morning, I visited my childhood home one last time. My mother wasn't there, at work, probably, at whatever job she could find now that she'd quit the gallery. I left the wrapped painting on the porch with a note. From the daughter, who turned her insults into fuel. It's worth enough to secure housing for several years. Sell it or keep it, your choice. I signed it a Lumen, then added Elena underneath. I didn't wait for a response. I didn't leave my contact information. This wasn't about reestablishing a relationship. Some bridges, once burned, cannot be rebuilt. Nor should they be. This was about closing a chapter on my own terms. In the years that followed, my work evolved. Critics noted a shift, less anger, more contemplation. Lumen's earlier pieces radiated defiance, one wrote. Her new collection suggests a different kind of strength, one born of resolution rather than resistance. I began teaching workshops for young artists from difficult backgrounds. I established a scholarship foundation. I stepped fully into the light as a Lumen, giving interviews and attending my own openings. When people asked about my journey, I told them the truth. That art saved me, that creating had been my salvation. I spoke about resilience and reclamation. But I never publicly shared the story of my mother or the slashed canvas. Those wounds had scarred over, no longer defining me. 5 years later, I received a small package. Inside was a newspaper clipping, an announcement of a youth art program at a community center in my hometown. The center's name? Lumen Arts Initiative. The director? Gloria Martinez, my mother. No note accompanied it. None was needed. I never got a traditional apology, and I stopped waiting for one. I built a life without her support, and it turned out more vibrant, more powerful, and more breathtaking than any painting I could have imagined. Because in the end, my greatest work of art wasn't on canvas, it was the woman I became.